Somebody came to me this week and said that they've had a very close relationship with Allah since childhood, and that they've made dua to Allah from a very early age, praying tahajjud, even when they were a teenager. And whenever they asked Allah for something, Allah provided. This person actually had a pretty tough life. Father passed away at an early age, no brothers, and this woman has lived a pretty lonely life and basically decided to really truly depend on Allah. And so as she grew and developed in her years, she found that Allah miraculously answers her prayers. Every time she asks Allah for something, Allah has never left her prayer unanswered. So she developed this reliance and this closeness with Allah and would always turn back to Allah. She needs something, she goes and prays 2 rak'ahs and she makes dua to Allah. So a really beautiful connection she had with Allah. But where did the question come from? The question came from the fact that more recently she went through quite a series of very unexpected difficulties in life. And she decided that she's going to increase her ibadah to Allah and increase her du'as because her problems have also increased. So you figure the more your problems increase, the more you're going to ask Allah to help you solve your problem. And so she does that, and she prays like she's never prayed before, fasts like she's never fasted before, begs Allah, cries to Allah, sheds tears before Allah like she's never done before. But the problems keep getting worse. They don't get any better. And she starts thinking to herself, maybe Allah is not happy with me, because before I used to pray and everything used to get answered. I've never had this problem before. Every time I had a need, I turned back to Allah and Allah solved my problem. But now I'm making dua after dua after dua, and I continue to beg Allah, and my problems are not getting solved, they're only getting worse. What could possibly be the reason? And in her mind, the reason was, I must have done something wrong. Allah must no longer be answering my prayers because somehow I've been disqualified. I'm not in Allah's good books anymore. We make dua, every human being makes dua, and we're expecting that Allah Azza wa Jal will give us an answer. We're hoping that Allah will solve our problem. There are 2 kinds of du'as basically, for most of us. The one kind of dua, and I'm talking about the ones we make for ourselves. One kind of dua is we want a problem that we have right now to be solved. We have an issue, we have some circumstance, and we want Allah Azza wa Jal to protect us from falling into a worse problem, to secure the good things that we have, etc. And of course we make dua for our future. We make dua for ourselves, our children, and to take care of things in the future. Ya Allah, things are good right now, Ya Allah, keep them this way. Preserve what we have here. These are the kinds of duas that we make for ourselves. Your dua getting answered immediately or not getting answered immediately has nothing to do with whether or not Allah is happy with you. It has nothing to do with that. There is no connection between those 2 things. And even if there was a connection, you will never know. You cannot guess what the reason is. You have the case of Nouman alayhi salam, who was a very loving father. He made da'wah, he invited his people to Islam for 950 years. Can you imagine? You think he made dua for his son? You think he made dua for his wife? All those years, or he didn't care about them? Someone who cares so much about his nation, they spit on him, they insult him, and he goes back to them and makes dua for them 950 years. You think he ignored his own son, his own wife? All those years of dua, and they didn't change. Isn't that the case? Does he blame himself? Yeah, maybe I didn't do something right. Or maybe Allah stopped listening to me. The reason I'm starting with that is people that were much better than we are, much better than we are, they also had similar problems. There are parents in the audience that make dua for their kids. And they see that their children are going away from the religion. They're going down a dark path. And they can't control it. And they're making dua for them. And they're not seeing that their dua is being answered. And now they're getting frustrated. Is there something wrong with me? Why isn't Allah answering? Well, you're not the first one to be put in that position. Our Messenger ﷺ made lots of dua. You don't think he made dua for his uncles? His family? You don't think he considered Abu Lahab when he made dua for guidance? And if he did, despite all of that loving dua, Allah Azza wa Jalla will Himself tell him, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You don't get to guide who you love. There are people among us, there are children among us who wish their parents or their elders were acting in a more guided way. I've met so many young people whose parents are in a haram, explicitly haram business. And the children, the son and the daughter is trying to tell the father and the mother, please get out of this. We're dependent on you, you're paying my college tuition, you're providing for us, but you're providing for us from haram income. And I'm not in a position to provide for the family right now, but this is wrong. And then they're told you're being disrespectful, you shouldn't talk back to your parents, etc., etc. Now, it's the flip side. It's the children making dua for the guidance of their parents. But things aren't changing. Things are where they were. These frustrating situations happen. And then on top of that are situations like health calamity. Not just family problems, but health calamity. Or you can't find a job, you have money problems. And you're making dua to Allah. You ask yourself, I even did i'tikaf last year. And I kept making dua and I didn't pick my head up from sajda all night long, and still I have this problem. Still it didn't go anywhere. So the first thing I want to remind myself and all of you is that prophets ﷺ, all of them, much before us, Allah mentions their du'as consistently in the Quran. And Allah also mentions their problems consistently in the Quran. You don't think, for example, that Yaqub alayhi salam, the father of 12 sons, made dua for all of his sons? And especially for his son Yusuf, when he lost his son Yusuf, you don't think he made dua for Yusuf's safety, that Yusuf should come back home, that he could look at his beautiful son once again? We know that he cried so much he lost his eyesight. Ibiyaddat aynahu. He lost his eyes over crying over his son. And all of those du'as for so many years go unanswered, and then they eventually get answered. You don't think that the mother of Musa alayhi salam, when she put her baby in the water, and the river just takes the basket away, the basket could flip over any time. And how do you know the basket is waterproof? How do you know it's not going to leak? How do you know it's not going to hit a rock and it's done? You're throwing something in a river. It's not a joke, it's a baby in a river. You don't think that mother is making dua to Allah? And notice the difference. In that case, in the case of Musa's mother, she makes dua to Allah, and a few hours later, she's reunited with her son. Just a few hours later. By the time the baby is hungry for the next meal, he's back with his mother. And in the other case, with the case of Yusuf alayhi salam, he was separated from his father. But he wasn't reunited with his father for many years. For many, many years. We are going to go through difficulty in life. And all of our problems are not going to be solved because we made a dua to Allah. Understand the reality of dua. What is the purpose of dua? We often confuse dua with talab. Talab in Arabic means to ask for something, to demand something. Dua means literally to call. That's what it means. Da'awtukum, I called you, I invited you, I cried out to you. This is dua. When we make dua to Allah, sometimes in that dua we are making demands. It's true. We're making requests. But we should never forget that all of those requests, you know what they are at the end of the day? It's a humble slave of Allah, turning back to Allah and begging Allah to help him with whatever problem. But it's more than Allah solving your problem. It's just the act that you communicated with Allah that's the most valuable thing. The fact that you actually engaged Allah in conversation, that is the goal in the end. Whether or not Allah will solve your problem immediately is a separate problem. And I want to share just a quick thing about that, then I come to Maryam salamun alayha. Sometimes you go through problems and you ask yourself, what is my fault in all of this? Why do I have to go through these problems? What did I do to deserve this? Let me ask you this. Yusuf alayhi salam was a child, right? A child by definition is innocent. What did a child do to deserve being kidnapped? What has a child ever done to deserve being thrown inside of a well in the middle of the woods? What has a child ever done to deserve being sold as a child slave in a different land? What is that, when he grows up as a young man, what did he ever do to deserve being thrown in jail over a false accusation? And he spent many years in jail, not because of something he did. He was innocent. And he spent all those years in jail. He went through situations in life that if anybody else went through those situations, you'll say, life is unfair, man, what are you going to do? Life is unfair, But you know what happens to a believer? They don't just say life is unfair, they say Allah is unfair, ma'adallah. Allah did that to him. Yet Allah says in Surah Yusuf, Wallahu ghalibun ala amrihi. Allah was overlooking everything he did in his decision. Every decision that was made for Yusuf, Allah was dominating that decision, overlooking that decision. How? Sometimes you and I go through difficulty because Allah knows something better is coming. Sometimes that better thing that is coming is for you. Sometimes it's for somebody else. Sometimes it's not for you. Sometimes it's for somebody else. Sometimes the benefit of your difficulty will come back to you, the return will come back to you while you are still alive. Sometimes the return is meant to come back to you after you go back to Allah. What happened with Yusuf alayhi salam? A father was separated from a child. It's a tragedy, isn't it? But imagine, if he was never kidnapped, he would never be in the well. If he was never in the well, he would never end up in Egypt. If he was never in Egypt, he would have never grown up there and been thrown into prison. If he was never in prison, he would have never met those two guys he met in prison, whose dream he interpreted. If he never met those two people, one of them who got to live and go back to the king, and when the king saw a dream, a strange dream, he would have never said, wait, I know someone who can help interpret your dream. And if that never happened, and you know what that dream was? 7 good years in the country, and 7 years there's not going to be any crop, any produce, any harvest. People are going to starve to death. If Yusuf was not in prison, alayhi salam, and then was taken out to interpret that dream at that time, there would have been an economic, financial, social crisis in the country, and hundreds of thousands of children would have starved to death. One child suffered for a few years. But because of that child suffering, Allah's plan was to save a lot of families, a lot of fathers and mothers from losing their children to starvation. Because of the plan that Yusuf alayhi salam came back when he interpreted the dream and gave, when he became the treasurer. I have a friend, some of you might have heard of him. His name is Robert de Villa. I asked the sister about him if she knows him, and she said yes, she's heard of him. The man can't move any part of his body other than his face. He can't move any part of his body. What did he ever do to deserve that? Nothing. But how many people have accepted Islam because of his disability? How many people have just heard about that and have come back to Allah? How many people that were ungrateful in life, even though they were Muslim, they were only Muslim by name, and decided to submit their heart back to Allah because that man is sitting in a bed. His suffering, his pain becomes guidance for millions of people. You understand? Sometimes the difficulty you and I go through is actually a small price to pay for a lot of khayr, a lot of good that will either come to me now or it will come to me in the akhirah, will come to me after I go back to Allah. So our du'as are not the same as placing an order.